You're listening to the Happy Doc Student Podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing clarity to the often mysterious doctoral process. Do you feel like you're losing your mind? Let me and my guests show you how to put more joy in your journey and graduate with your sanity, health, and relationships intact. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Frederick, and today I'm hanging out with Matt O'Neill. Matt is a happiness expert whose work has positively impacted the lives of over 100,000 people worldwide. He's the host of the Good Mood Revolution podcast and author of the book by the same name. I've been looking forward to today's chat because recently my life has felt uncharacteristically chaotic. And maybe you're going through a tough time right now as well. And if you're not, listen in because you'll pick up some tips for when you are. Because today Matt is going to show us how to reclaim the happiness that is our birthright, even when things look bleak. Matt, welcome to the show.
Dr. Heather, I am so excited to be here.
I can't wait to learn from you and give the audience some practical tips. But before we do, because happiness experts always have such an interesting backstory, I was wondering if you would share yours with the audience.
Yes, I was born to teach people how to feel better about themselves. And I can tell you this because when I was a child, I would get these moments of inspiration and I would think, oh, I'm supposed to teach people how to feel better about themselves. And then when I was a teenager, I would get moments of inspiration as I wasn't happy at all, that I would teach people how to feel happy. And I'm like, that's weird. And then when I was in my 20s, the same things would happen. When I was in my 30s, I finally just said, okay, well, let's go ahead and write the book. And it's taken me another 4 or 5 years from when I started writing to actually finish Good Mood Revolution because I couldn't write from an inauthentic space. In order for me to say, hey, we're going to live our life totally joyful. I'm like, I can't write about living totally joyful if I can't embody totally joyful for extended periods of time. So it took a long time for me to actually develop the concepts that I can teach people, but I wanted it to come from an authentic place. And that's how I am here.
Matt, our stories are kind of opposite. I mean, as you know, I'm all about putting joy in the journey. But you knew from a young age, this was your calling. I had to go through a lot of suffering, small s, capital S, before I understood that happiness is my birthright. I was over 40 before I came to that revolution. Can we talk about this concept? Because I think it might be foreign to some people.
Yes. And I don't want to downplay anyone's suffering, and all of us have, me included. I've trudged through the darkness. Once you get to a point where you say, no, happiness is my birthright, I deserve it, and I can claim it at any individual moment. Every single moment I can claim it, because the only one in my head right now that's making any decisions about how I feel is me. I am the only one in there. Now, at first we don't know, because we're run by a bunch of subconscious beliefs. And these subconscious beliefs were programmed by us at a very young age. We could have been 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, 13 years old, but we made decisions when we were a child that then have run our decision about how happy we're going to feel. But we made those decisions. It doesn't matter if we had trauma with a little t or a big T, or suffering with a little s or a big S. We inside us experienced an experience and then chose to take on some beliefs. But what's so liberating about this is that now that we're adults, we can learn the skills to go in, find those beliefs that have been limiting our joy, and change them. We can actually change our subconscious beliefs and then reprogram ourselves to experience the joy that's always been there. And it's just there. It's like, a great analogy we always hear is that the sun is always there, even when the clouds come in. Well, the light of our soul, the light of our joy, the light of our inspiration, our creativity, our happiness, like the love that just shines through, is always there. The clouds are these subconscious thoughts and beliefs and emotions. And there's just 8 negative emotions that get in the way. And there's only 8 of them. It's so nice. It's like, once we understand there's only 8 different flavors of suffering, And I can identify those eight. Eight's not too many to remember. We can remember a phone number that's 7 digits. So we can remember 8 different things that could possibly block our joy. Then we just learn to like move those 8 clouds out of the way, and joy is always there.
And Matt, I would like to pause there because I'm guessing I have some listeners who may be confusing this inner kernel, this little seed that we're born with, this birthright of happiness, this state of well-being that we can tap into. That often gets confused with hedonic pleasure, this chasing of a feeling. So while that yummy margarita or that big slice of chocolate cake may seem like it's bringing you happiness, that fleeting pleasure, that's not what we're talking about here, right?
Absolutely. And that's the reason for all the addiction. 74% of the United States, it has either some form of alcohol consumption, drug consumption, or antidepressant medication on a monthly basis. So 3/4 of us are using artificial stimulants to experience pleasure. And that's not cake. That's not overeating. That's not pornography. These are different ways that we experience pleasure. What's pleasure? It releases a dopamine in our brain. That is not the feeling of our innate joy. All spiritual teachings talk about this. The kingdom of heaven is within. Eckhart Tolle is teaching us about how to feel enlightened in the power of now. And he says that now is so delicious. This present moment is so joyful. It is. It's always there. It's always available to us in the absence of these negative moods and these negative emotions. And that's what's so exciting, is that anyone can learn this skill. It's not beyond any of us. All of the greatest spiritual texts and everybody that's talking about how you can access this kingdom of heaven says it's not beyond you. It is here. It is literally here in the now. So I know I wanted to talk about some practical things because this is very theoretical, and it's, it gets a lot easier once we start to say, okay, well, what do I actually do about this? The first thing is that a lot of times when we're going for an advanced degree, we're grinding. There's so much work to do. For me, I've got 4 kids, ages 11 to 3, and then I've got 3 businesses. And I've got my podcast, Good Mood Revolution, that I'm so passionate about, and the book, and there's so many things, right? And life can feel like a grind sometimes. However, the idea that we have to sacrifice our happiness to get this thing done is a total myth. It is a total myth. The reason that we have this myth is that there is a piece of us. There's 2 parts of us. We got an ego piece of us that is all about the survival of the human body, our survival. And then we got our higher self. And it doesn't matter what your spiritual beliefs are, but there's another piece of you that can hear your thoughts. This is a really easy way to figure it out, is that I'm not actually the one thinking my thoughts. I can hear these thoughts coming in. Well, where do those thoughts come from? Well, our heart beats. We don't tell it to beat. It just beats. Our brain thinks thoughts. We don't tell it to think thoughts. It just does. The thoughts come from our brain, our human brain. Well, our human brain is always trying to get us to survive. Anything you can do to increase your survival chances, you're going to do it. And it is tricking us all the time. It's like, hey, if you just sacrifice feeling happy right now and grind through this work, and if you just sacrifice the next 3 years and get this advanced degree, if you could just sacrifice just 3 measly years, I'll let you be happy at the end of those 3 years. And so what do? We sacrifice these 3 years and we get this accomplishment. And guess what shows up after those 3 years? Another reason we have to sacrifice. Oh my gosh, well, now my kids are teenagers, and those teen years are so hard. If I could just get them launched, if I could just get them off to college, then I could be happy. And so this idea of delaying our happiness is one that is sold to us by our brain. It thinks that if we just keep grinding, that we'll accumulate enough, we'll hoard enough that our survival will be guaranteed. And it never actually lets us be joyful. So joy is in the now. How do we get to the now? It starts by recognizing when you feel like you need to sacrifice. So let's say we need to study, or let's say we've got a giant academic paper that we need to produce, and it's due next week. And we're like, man, I don't feel like doing it. But your brain's like, you have to do it. You just have to suffer through it, grind through this thing, get this thing knocked out, and then I'll let you relax and be happy. Just stop. In that moment where you feel like you have to grind and do something that's not fun, stop and recognize you have another choice. You never have to do it. This actually puts the ego in check. It's your higher self, the one that decides if it's going to accept these thoughts or not accept these thoughts, says, I'm in control. You're telling me I have to do it. I'm not going to do it unless I'm enjoying it. So I have another alternative, which is I'll never do it. Now, our brain is going to start to fight with us. And it's like, well, if I say I'll never do it, what if I just don't ever do it? And then I don't graduate and then I don't have blah, 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 blah. What do we want the advanced degree for?
Oh, wow. That is the $1 million question. I would say that most people would answer they're pursuing an advanced degree as a means to an end. There's something they want that they need the degree for. Maybe it's a job at a university or a specific credential or license, like a licensed psychologist.
Ultimately, we think it's going to make us happy.
The
only reason that we're doing it is because we think once we accomplish it, it's going to make us happy. Maybe we'll get higher income and then that higher income will allow us to be happy. Maybe we'll fulfill this lifelong dream. And then once we fulfill that dream, then we'll be happy. So I'll just sacrifice happiness, which only is available now because it's the only time we live in. We live in now. And then 3 years from now, when we graduate, we're also in the now. If we don't learn to be happy now, 3 years from now, when we graduate, it'll still be now, but we won't have the skill set to be happy once we accomplish the thing we said we'd be happy once we did it. So we have to do it now. It's like in this moment is crucial because what we're doing it for is to feel happy. So we have to learn to be happy now. So I'm going back to this idea of sacrifice. Your brain is like, you have to get this thing done and you have to sacrifice your joy. I say, this is my process. Anytime I notice myself having to sacrifice, I sit down and I say, I don't have to. I don't have to do this at all. And once my brain understands that I am serious, that I really never have to do this thing, and yeah, there's consequences, but I see it as equally as valid of an option. And we can't just skip this. You can't say like, oh, I'm just pretending that it's an option. No, you have to actually see, okay, I could never turn this paper in. There'd be consequences, but I could see it could actually happen. I could just never do it. Then at that point, you say, which choice? Not doing it and accepting those consequences or doing it, which choice is more joyful today? You may decide not to do it. You may say, well, today I'm just totally burned out. I'm not going to do it today. I think that I'll have more energy when I wake up tomorrow with a cup of coffee. I'm not going to grind through it today. Today's not the right day for it. Good. Okay, you've made the more joyful choice, and joy is a choice. If you say, no, I'm going to do it, I think that's the more joyful choice for me. Everything's slammed, everything's busy. This is the time, and I do want to have this. I don't want to fail this. So I'll do it. Then you ask yourself another question. How could I do this and enjoy this process? This starts to open up crazy amounts of creativity, which is part of that inspiration, that joy, that light that's our birthright. Creativity is one of the things that we're made of. We are creative beings. And so when we ask ourselves a question, how could I do this now that I've chosen to do it? It's not forced upon me. Who's it forced by? Again, the ego forcing you better do this or else all these bad things will happen and then you'll die. That's really what the line of thinking is from the ego. Is you like, no, actually I won't die and I don't have to do it, but I'm going to choose to do it. It's like, all right, cool, you're in charge. But if I'm going to choose to do it, now it's my choice. It already feels better because I chose it instead of being forced to. How could I do it and enjoy the process? This starts to get really cool. You're like, man, maybe I'll go to a coffee shop today. I want to go be in a really cool vibe. I'm going downtown. I'm going to that cool coffee shop that sometimes we get to go to on the weekend. And I'm going to get this thing done in that cool vibe. And then I'm going to get chocolate cake. And it now has become like this cool, like awesome experience. Or I'm going to go to the beach, right? I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to rent a hotel room. I'm going to write all day in this hotel room, overlooking the water or the lake or whatever. And we start to create now really amazing experiences for ourselves, doing this thing that we thought we had to grind through doing. And we just have taken our joy back.
Matt, before we started recording, I let you know that I was really looking forward to learning something from you today because I knew that I was going to. And the way that you just position those two steps is something I've never heard before. So I'm so excited to try this out myself. It makes perfect sense. Stop and reflect, because no one's holding a gun to your head. You have the choice.
The ego is, though. Literally, the ego is telling you you're going to die if you don't do it. We don't recognize it, but there is a whole stream of you better do it or else subconscious thinking that is there, which is what we do have to counter.
So the pause gives a moment to recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I know you're there, ego, with the gun,
Mm-hmm.
but recognizing that it's not loaded, it just feels like it is.
Yes.
Maybe is the better analogy.
Yes. You've nailed it. And this is the crazy thing, is that, again, the ego is all about our bodily survival. It is always holding a carrot of joy out. It's like, do these things and I'll give you joy later. But if you don't do these things, you're going to die. Literally is the line.
And so you can use your imagination to go down these paths. What happens if I do? What happens if I don't?
Mm-hmm.
Decide in the moment, this is the choice that's best for me. And I have to say, sometimes that choice is to not do it. You said
Yes.
maybe the decision is, you know what? It is not a good day for me.
Right. That's right. And then that's self-love. That is self-love. And how does self-love then now improve your life? Well, we're busy, right? We have other priorities. There are people who are counting on us. We might have kids. We've got significant others. We've got family members and friends. If we go into the darkness by believing these thoughts that we have to sacrifice our joy, and let's say we grind it out and we got that thing done, but we hate it in our life, and we now are resenting our life, we're going to snap at our loved one. We're not going to be like thinking about their needs. We're going to not be thinking about their needs. And then, like, our relationship could totally deteriorate. We could lose everything we really care about because we listen to these lies of the ego of sacrificing our joy. But if we do it the other way, let's say we say, hey, I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to love myself. Today's not the right day. Maybe I just need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to take a mental health day today. And we get our joy back. We go exercise. We move our body. We do things that are healthy for us. Our loved one comes home and they had a stressful day and we're available for them. And the thing that actually makes us happy, the human connection, the love, is there, and we are happy. I would so much rather be happy and do a little bit less.
And I think that's something that's difficult for doctoral students and also faculty to hear, because the personality that tends to be drawn to this type of endeavor is the overachiever, my to-do list is 1,000,000 miles long and I got this, I can handle it. But there has never been a time in my 25 years in higher education where I have seen someone take a break and that not be a good decision. Every single time, whether it's a break from the program, a break for a week, a break for a day, a break for a moment, it's always the right choice, because if you're not in that space where you have access to the front part of your brain, when the amygdala is firing and on board, danger, you can't perform anyway. Not just academically, but you brought up a really important point. No one is doing a doctoral degree in a vacuum. You've got kids, you've got family, you've got friends, you've got coworkers. And so your mood and your perspective of how this is working out is impacting your entire network.
I had a coach one time tell me, because I suffer from being an overachiever as well. He said, Matt, the way that you perform at your peak is by taking breaks. He said that vacation is not in the way of your success. That vacation is how you have more success. And, there's that famous study of the railroad workers when they were bringing railroads across the United States. I can't remember who did it, but he said, I'm going to take half the workers and we're going to have them work 4 hours a day and break 4 hours a day. And they produced almost twice as much railroad track as the people who worked all 8 hours. And it was because taking breaks created space now for rejuvenation, inspiration, fun. And now they're going at it with a bunch of energy, and they can actually do more than if we just grind through and slodge through. And by the way, it doesn't feel good either. And remember, we're just going after the advanced degree to feel happy. It's so fun when we figure this out. Every single thing I'm doing is because I want to feel good. And if I'm not feeling good now, I won't know how to feel good later because it's always now. And we get in this hamster wheel of I'll just keep doing this thing and then I'll feel happy, but I never do. And then I'll do that thing and feel happy and I never do. And then now I have this crisis. And if I could just get through this crisis, then I'll be happy. It's like, man, if we don't learn how to be happy while life is busy and chaotic and we have crises, we will actually never, ever be happy, because the moment in time when everything in life worked perfectly, that one day, that one magical day that we had 3 years ago, they only come around once every 3 years. And so we have to be super happy in the mess. And that's just a skill. It is totally a skill, completely learnable. Everyone can learn this skill. I'm not magic. I knew I was here to teach this. I said that at the beginning, but I lived all the worst bad moods. That overachiever, by the way, is driven from a negative mood.
Now, I do want to talk about those moods, but I want to pause for just a moment and say, listener, that nap, that walk, that time out, not that you need permission, but if that's what's going to make you feel better, please consider taking it. Okay, Matt, so now let's turn to those emotions.
Yeah, so the overachiever is driven by the emotion of hopelessness or overwhelm. And it's a myth. All of the 8 bad moods are lies. Just like that idea that we had to sacrifice is also a myth. It's a lie. These 8 are the ways that the ego manipulates us. So they're lies of the ego. The idea of overwhelm or hopelessness, the third of the most destructive of the 8 bad moods, is this idea that it's all up to me. It's all on my shoulders. No one else can do it. I don't have the support. No one else can do this because it's my path. It's my cross to bear. No one could do it as well as me. And there's no one around me that can support me or help me anyway. Okay, it's fine. It's fine to believe that. I don't know why we all believe it when we're overachievers, but we do. And the fact is, when we start to heal from this wound, and anytime you start to get into that, oh, it's all on my shoulders, I have to do everything, stop and say, okay, it's not all up to me. I didn't grow my food today. I didn't build the house I live in. I didn't go mine the gasoline that's in my car. I'm not getting the electricity that's turning my lights on. I'm not bringing myself water from the well. There's probably thousands of people supporting me today. It's not all up to me. Once we start to recognize we're being supported by like thousands, literally thousands of people who are unpacking our apples at the grocery store and being there, maybe even to deliver our groceries for us, then we start to realize, okay, it's not all up to me. I don't have to do it all. I don't have to do it all today. And then that allows us to then ask for help. When we get into this emotion of overwhelm, we think I have to do it all and no one can help me. And that's a total myth. We're just in an emotion. And once we recognize we're in that, the way out of that emotion is by asking for help. And there's so many people in your life that can help you. You can pay people to help you. It's just you don't believe you can when you're stuck in that emotion. It's just an emotion. But it's so nice because when we ask for help, again, we're loving ourselves and we're giving someone else an opportunity to love us back. And collaboration and love and relationships makes us feel really, really happy and supported. And again, that's what we want, is to feel happy and supported. So it's nice. It's nice to recognize that we're in it and then to just ask for some help.
So overwhelm, I would have to say, is probably one of my top ones, as well
Me
as
too.
a lot of the listeners. And so again, it's that pause, that reflection, that recognizing, and then understanding a way out. Asking for help, again, tends to be a challenge, but just like anything, practicing joyful happiness habits, practicing asking for help is also something you can learn how to do.
Yeah. We say it's a challenge only because that emotion has been running us. Maybe it's been running us for 30 years, but it doesn't have to run us anymore. That is one of the clouds that's blocking us from that joy. And as soon as we start to take down the wall, and what's the reason our young childhood self decided that it was all up to us and we had to do it all? Maybe we weren't supported as a kid and we felt like I needed the support and I didn't get it. And so it really was up to us to make sure that we were going to be provided for. For me, it was unfair. My dad abandoned us when I was 5. My mom was a secretary. There were 4 kids. I took on this thought, I have to be the man of the house at age 5. crazy. Like the amount of responsibility I put on my shoulders at such a young age. And then I just lived that way until I finally recognized that that was running me and that it wasn't healthy. And I thought that that idea that I'll just do it all on my own and I can do it better than everyone was helping me succeed. As soon as I stopped that program and reversed it, just this simple exercise I just told you, recognize you're being supported already, and then start asking other people to help you. And they actually love to help you. And then you love to be helped. It's so fun. My success went 10x because I quit being such a jerk. When I fall for the fallacy, it's all up to me and I'm better than you at all of it. I'm a jerk. I'm arrogant. You'll see a lot of really high performers be totally arrogant and dismissive of the people who are like busting their butt for them. That's how I was. And then once I started to ask for help and realize I needed help, I became so gracious and so appreciative. And then people work way harder because I recognized them and I recognized I needed them and they want to be needed. Right. And so that's really fun. So that, I know it's only one of the 8, but that was the one I really wanted to hit on the most for this podcast.
And so these other emotions, and maybe I'll put them in the show notes below. We'll see how that goes. But the overwhelm applies to everyone here working towards a big goal. Likely you're going to feel overwhelmed. But what about the people who might be listening going, okay, all that's making sense, but what about kind of let's go to the capital T trauma or capital S suffering, something really objectively terrible has happened. A divorce, a diagnosis of a terminal disease, the loss of a job. I think there's a lot of resistance. Well, okay, but if it's this situation, can you really find happiness? Can you really practice happiness in that situation?
Yes. And all of them. So that's why this is actually a spiritual endeavor. Happiness is spiritual, is because we live in a world of constant change. And so suffering is inevitable because everything we love, everything we care for is going to change, die, and go away. Our bodies are going to get sick and die. It is a absolute fact. And everyone we love, they have the exact same fate. And money, guess what? Money gets spent. And it goes away. And sometimes we get sued and it gets taken from us. And sometimes governments change rules and then we lose everything, right? Like these things happen, or maybe a hurricane comes through and takes your house and then the insurance doesn't pay for it. Like these catastrophes are opportunities. They are spiritual opportunities. And you want to figure out how joyful you've become? Well, you're going to get tested. And it's like, okay, am I going to be able to pass this test? Absolutely every single situation we have to become a master at reframing. So we are not upset with the situation. Again, in this present moment, there's nothing wrong in this present moment other than our thoughts and our stories we're telling ourselves about it. So let's use, I was fired from my job. Again, why is that so stressful? Survival. It's always going to come back to, I'm going to die. They're going to take my house. My kids won't have a place to live. And then we'll die. And so losing a job is or diagnosis, right? It's death. It's always life and death. And that's understanding that we're eternal is a really important piece of this. That's for another discussion, but there are exercises we can do to tap into and understand our eternity and strengthen our faith that we are eternal. And we can do that with exercises that we can talk about another time. But let's just talk about losing a job. So we're losing a job. And we didn't want to. Our suffering is resisting that it happened and saying it shouldn't have. And it's unfair. So anytime we're resisting reality, we are suffering. We have work to do. We have to go find a new job. That's just a fact. But if we take the drama out of it, going to find a new job is kind of easy. We're in a great job economy right now. Anyone can go find a new job. But the drama is that shouldn't have happened. They treated me unfair. And it's really tapping into the lowest of the 8 bad moods, which is shame and rejection. That they fired me and I'm not lovable and I'm not worthy and I'm not worth anything. And that's the real subconscious resistance that's going on there, is that they should have loved me and accepted me. And so that wound is showing up in all the hatred toward them and in our resentment and our wanting to get revenge. So without that wound and without any judgment, we would just go find a new job and it would be kind of joyful experience. So the first step when anything big happens is that we have to recognize we're resisting reality. And then we move into one of the 8 positive moods, which is acceptance. We just need to say, this has happened and I fully see and accept it's happened. Acceptance is the first step. We cannot keep resisting. We can't say it shouldn't have. We can't judge it. We can't say they were wrong. We can't say this is wrong. We have to say, I fully accept this situation. Acceptance is the foundation of us now moving into a joyful life. From acceptance, we now have to find gratitude for something about the situation. This is a happiness blueprint. We have to stop resisting, move to acceptance, and then find gratitude for something. So if I lost my job, there were probably things about that job I didn't like. So I'd start with just simple gratitude, like, man, I really didn't like Jim. Jim always had that negative attitude, and now I don't have to see him anymore. I'm kind of grateful that I don't have to be around that energy. And man, I'm also grateful because they didn't really respect me there. I felt like I was working my tail off and nobody noticed. I'm kind of grateful that I'm not in that situation anymore. And now, I'm actually grateful because I have an opportunity to go do what my heart was telling me I could do. So we move from acceptance, where we stop resisting, to I'm grateful about some aspects of this. And then from gratitude, we can move into actually, I love this situation. Anytime we choose to love a situation exactly as it is, joy comes back. And I explain this by asking a very simple question. And Heather, I'll ask you, what's a day that was just so happy? That it was like one of the happiest days you can think of. Just what comes to mind?
Europe with the kids. The day we landed in Europe, and I can still envision, we went to this tiny little bistro. We had this amazing it was just a bread and cheese sandwich, really. It wasn't anything fancy. But being in this moment with my kids was pure joy, pure joy. I have a picture of it. I'm looking at it right now, right in front of me.
It sounds awesome. And so you're with people you love, and it was this big thing that you really wanted to do. In that moment, you were absolutely in love with everything in your reality. Now, inside of you, you were the one that was loving your reality. You were choosing it. I have other people that could go to Europe and the flight was delayed, or the stewardess was rude, or the people there kind of gave them a stink eye. They didn't have anything really good to eat. It was just this kind of stale bread and cheese sandwich, and my kids were fighting with each other. It was a miserable time. So what are they doing? They're not loving reality. But the choice to love our reality is within us. We are choosing it. I have a spiritual truth that helps me with this. And it's absolutely everything is happening in the most loving way possible for me. Even in this experience. This is a total spiritual truth. And if you want to know that it's a truth, look back on the hardest moments of your life and see that they were absolutely necessary for you to have the life you have today. And you'll be like, oh, I didn't want that terrible thing to happen. But if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten the insight that led me to where I am. So I actually needed to go through that experience I was resisting and hated so that I could have this that I have now. Well, if all of those other terrible experiences help me get to where I am now, then maybe this thing I'm resisting that I think is so awful is actually a really loving thing that's supposed to be helping me get to where I need to go. Ultimately, everything, even the most traumatic experiences are for the growth of our eternal soul. We're always moving in a direction of having more love, more understanding, and more compassion. And when we can understand that, we go through a really traumatic experience, a loss of a loved one, and we say, wow, I have just lost somebody I love so much. This is so sad. I love them so much. But I understand that it's teaching me how much I love everyone. And there are people in my life today that I will not take for granted any longer. And so every experience is moving us back to love if we allow it. And if we stay stuck in the resistance, we'll never go to acceptance, to joy, and then ultimately to love, which is where happiness resides. Happiness is just love.
And Matt, I think for so much of my life, it was very easy for me to be resistant And I recognize it now. And hey, I'm not perfect, but eventually when I'm in a situation and I'm experiencing one of those negative, uncomfortable feelings, I can recognize, hang on, is this an opportunity for me to reframe what's really important to me? And what I have to constantly remind myself is that this experience is not creating my suffering. How I'm thinking about this experience is creating my suffering. But boy, sometimes is it tough. You have given us some amazing, very practical tips. The pause, the reflection, the making the choice, finding the joy in your choice, and really holding on to the eternal perspective. The eternal perspective is so important when it's something big. I would love to have you back to talk about that if you're willing.
It would be a total pleasure. We could go into some of these other positive emotions and how to access them. That's what I love talking about, how to be more joyful. So it'd be so fun.
Well, Matt, as we're wrapping up today's episode, do you have a favorite quote or some final words of wisdom you want to share with the audience?
Yes. I am just so proud of you, Heather, and what you're doing to brighten the world. You're taking a stand for people's joy in their journey. And my advice is that everybody continue to listen to this show because you're a worker of the light and this show is making a difference in the world.
Oh, Matt, thank you so much. And thanks for sharing your time with us today. When I have you back, your book will probably be out, but I'll be sure to have a link in the show notes if people want to pre-order, as well as all the ways that they can get in touch with you. And thank you for the work that you're doing and for teaching me something new today that I can't wait to put into practice. I look forward to having you back.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Until then, if you're looking for more ways to invite joy in your journey, check out the free resources at expandyourhappy.com. You'll find downloads like an article I wrote titled The Doctoral Journey, 12 Things You Need to Know That They Probably Won't Tell You. You'll also find a PDF that organizes all podcasts by the 7 steps detailed in the Happy Doc Student Handbook, which you can also find on the website. Finally, if you're looking for Happy Doc Student swag, I've got that too. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, and if you want to make my day, rate and review so that together we can change the way doctoral education is delivered and experienced. Hey, one more thing. Just a quick reminder that the information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only.